Hi, it's Katie Lebeds from Learning to Lean. Thanks for joining me today for our data confidence, quick wins for better management systems. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Katie Lebeds. I am the president and CEO of Learning to Lean, a lean consulting firm based out of Hortonville, Wisconsin. I am a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and certified project management professional. I'm also an emotional intelligence coach. I've written 3 different books, which you can find on Amazon, and I have over 20 years experience in project management, continuous improvement, leadership, and coaching. And I'm so excited for you to be here today to talk about one of my favorite topics, data. So what most organizations don't have is a data problem. Most organizations have a data confidence problem, a data confidence problem. So it is something that I see on a day-to-day basis that people don't trust their data. Or you'll hear things like, I know somebody can go into the back end of the system to update that. And for me, that just strikes fear in my heart when I hear that, because I know that data is being manipulated. And by the way, when we talk about data, we can talk about data that is collected in a system, or we can talk about data that is collected manually. So when I ask this question, most people don't necessarily trust the data within their organization, as I've already mentioned, because they know that maybe their system is old. I had a customer that was using Microsoft Access for their database, for their quote unquote ERP system. If you know anything about Access, you know that Access has a tendency to start leaking data over time. So maybe you have an old system that is leaking data. Maybe you have a system where I've already mentioned people are going into the back end of the system and manipulating it. Or we're capturing the data manually and we haven't really provided people with the instructions on how to do that. So most organizations don't trust their data. And we've all been here and we've all done that. Ever made a decision where it turned out it was wrong because the data was inaccurate? And sometimes that happens when we're working on a project, or unfortunately, it does happen when we're going into a Kaizen event where we are going in with the knowledge that we thought was accurate in regards to the problem that we were trying to solve. But we find out in the middle of the event, oh, it wasn't as big as we thought, or it wasn't as bad, quote unquote, bad as we thought. And then you're kind of looking around the room wondering, oh my gosh, how did we get here? And how did I get into a situation where honestly, I don't know what data is accurate at this point. So why does data accuracy and basically data trustworthiness matter? Because poor data leads to bad decisions. So first of all, if you've been to any of my classes or if you've heard me speak, I like to talk about making data-driven decisions. However, if you don't trust your data, then you are going to make poor decisions based on something that is inaccurate. Teams arguing over numbers instead of solving problems. You will generally hear that, or in my experience, you will hear that with organizations that have multiple sites. And one site will say, oh, we're doing really well, and here's our number. And then another site will say, well, how did you calculate that? Right? I don't believe, or off to the side, I don't believe they're on-time delivery numbers. So you'll hear teams arguing about it. Bad measurements create rework and waste, and we know that. So how do bad measurements happen during the process? They can happen by people doing any testing or sort of double checking or inspection or measurement, right? That can create rework and waste. Incoming inspection. So many companies, when you have ordered parts, they are coming in from your suppliers and they have what's called incoming inspection. And when we do that, there should be some instructions in regards to how to do that properly. Some parts go directly, what's called dock to stock. So they come in and they go right to the shelf. Other products have to be inspected, and bad measurements during inspection can cause rework and waste because somebody was measuring it incorrectly or reading it incorrectly, saying that these parts are okay when actually they weren't. So, what's the cost of the hidden cost of bad data? And there's obviously a lot of them. We just talked about rework, delays, most definitely. So, delays because we don't, again, have really good data, we're not trusting our data. We're going to make poor decisions. We're trying to make decisions based on data, but the data is wrong. So, therefore, our decisions aren't the best. We could have customer complaints, most definitely, frustration, and lost revenue, most definitely lost revenue from the hidden cost of bad data. And I'll share with you some examples here in a second. Symptoms of low data confidence. So, how do you really know that you might not have confidence in your data? Different people get different results. That's low data confidence, right? So whether this is from site to site or from inspector to inspector or from operator to operator, right? The operator has set up the machine or maybe use a setup tech and they set up to the specifications. The next person or the operator comes in and looks at it and they're like, no, that's not right. Data is collected inconsistently. So we're looking for data over the past 6 months. And when we ask those type of questions, you will see maybe it was collected for the first month of the year or the first month of the quarter. And people look at that data and they're like, yeah, I think we're good. We've got a solid plan. This goes into measure and control for the DMAIC process, and then they don't gather any more data. When really after this first 30 days, things started to go off the rails, but since they didn't capture the data, they don't have it. Metrics that change frequently. So metrics either that the metrics you're measuring or new metrics coming in. So any type of fluctuation with your metrics or teams don't trust the reports. Yeah, I know we get that report. It automatically gets sent to us for errors, but I don't really trust it. I'm going to go double check it. Or you have organizations where you have these great, expensive, fancy ERP systems, and you still have people doing things in Excel, which means they don't trust the system or the reports. And nobody knows where the numbers came from. Okay, so, and decisions are based on opinions instead of based on data. So measurement systems are everywhere. A measurement system is bigger than a gauge on a spreadsheet or a spreadsheet. So measurement systems can be including things like manufacturing inspections. Customer surveys are a measurement system. And I think sometimes when we hear system, we think IT, but it can be a wide variety of different ways to collect this. Project status reports can be a measurement system, right? So are we on time, on track, on budget? Do we have the resources we need? All of those are ways to be able to measure. Safety incidents, those are measurement systems too. How many near misses did we have? How many actual incidents did we have for the past week, month, or quarter? HR metrics, right? So HR has metrics. Those metrics are things like employee turnover. HR metrics also could be, depending on the time of the year, it could be also how many people have successfully signed up for their insurance for the next year, right? So they're running those type of metrics all of the time, and that's a measurement system. I think we're all pretty familiar with the sales forecast and of course lead times, right? So lead times can be either from us to our customer or from our suppliers to us. And call center metrics. So some of my customers have call centers and it's very interesting to look at all of the metrics. And as you can imagine, It's the volume of calls, how often they come in. It's trying to figure out staffing for call centers. When do they see any seasonality, which they do in many cases? How long have people been on hold? That's one that we've all heard of before too. It's just like when you call for a call center and you hear we're experiencing a higher call volume than normal today, and you're like, oh no, I'm going to be on here forever. So, 5 questions everyone should ask. What are we measuring? Right? What are we measuring? Are you measuring just to measure, or are you measuring to do something with it? Or are you measuring because you think you're supposed to, but you're not quite sure what happens with it? So that is, why are we measuring, right? Who measures it? So who is responsible? Who puts the data in the system, or who keeps track of that document? I went to the post office the other day. So we live near Dale, Wisconsin, which is a very little tiny town. And I went to the post office, and I bought a book of stamps when I was there. And the lady had to write it down on a piece of paper. And I said to her, I go, you are writing down sales on paper forms? And she said, yes, our post office here is old school. And we have to write down anytime we have any sort of sale of an item, right, that you could buy at the post office, whether it's a box, a shipping label, or a book of stamps. How is it measured? Right. So, how is it measured? It's not always just easy measurement, right? So, it's not always just saying a count of something. When you work with different industries, how it's measured and in how we are keeping track of that is a huge ordeal. So, is it measured in a count? Is it measured in weight? Is it measured in fullness? It is very interesting to work with different industries to figure out, is it a big deal, feet versus inches, or pounds versus tons? Or I have a customer that everything they ship must be shipped in a batch of 12. So how does their system track that? How do they track that? And boy, if that gets messed up, that's a disaster, right? And what decisions depend on it? So what decisions depend on that data? So I will give you a great example of not having good data to make decisions. So when I was working for Jabil, I worked in supply chain, and I was working on my black belt project. And for my black belt project, they decided that I would work on the analysis of centralizing purchasing for the entire company. At the time, the VP of supply chain went to the board of directors and told them that they were going to save millions of dollars, right? Millions of dollars. So it was interesting to understand that. And I came back, I got all the data, I did all the analysis, and no matter how many different scenarios, I had like 16 different scenarios, I could not come up with savings that were more than $300,000. So it was very interesting because I asked the VP, I go, where did you get that number from? Like, what am I missing? Am I doing a calculation wrong? I'm, very much worried about how I'm doing it if I'm making a mistake. And he basically said, I just kind of pulled that number out of the air. So what kind of decisions, where are we getting our data from, and do we trust it? All great examples. So how do we work through this? How do we solve these problems? So quick win number 1, create operational definitions. So everyone defines metrics differently. And I ask that question when I go to customers. How do you define on-time delivery? And I get varied answers. I get the answers of on-time delivery or on-time in full. I'm like, well, what's the difference, right? So for some companies, on time in full means if they ordered 100, we ship them 100. And I'm like, okay, what is on time delivery if it's not on time in full? It's like, well, if they ordered 100 and we shipped them 25, then on time, that would be on time delivery. I'm like, it's a different way to look at it. So we really need to understand their definitions. So what is your definition of late, right? How do we define late in an organization? or what everybody likes to say, it's important, or it's a priority, or it's on fire. What is it? How do we define a defect? Right? In my mind, it should be pretty clear what a defect is. A defect is something that a customer has not asked for, right? So a customer has provided us with some sort of specification, and if it doesn't meet that specification, therefore it is a defect. What's a customer complaint? Now, sometimes you'll hear customers are complaining about this, or the customer is upset about this. But what do we define a customer complaint as? Was that just an offhanded, wow, it would have been great if you guys would have done it this way, but that's okay? Or is it a formal complaint? So we really do need to define that, because all of those things on the screen could be left up to interpretation, along with the word urgent, hot, priority, or whatever else you want to call it. So create operational definitions. So a quick win would be write one sentence. A late shipment is, and define it for your organization. As an example, a late shipment is any shipment delivered more than 24 hours after the promised delivery date. Okay, so every organization is going to have a different response for this, but it should be defined for the entire organization, no matter where you are in that organization. What does this definition mean to us? So again, what does on time mean for your company? So I want you to think about that and contemplate how you define on time. And does everybody define on time the same way throughout the whole organization? Because variation often starts with language, right? Variation often starts with language. So quick win number 2 is to standardize the data collection, right? So there's 2 examples here, bad form and good form. So bad form of getting data collection would be missing instructions. Where do I put this field? Where do I enter this data? Do I enter it in inches and pounds, or what? Good form is clear categories so that people can truly understand where we need to enter data or how we need to capture it. Bad form is free text everywhere. Good form is instructions. Now, we all know that in some systems, if you hover over an area with your mouse, you are going to get a little help box that pops up and gives you instructions. Or if you hover over like the little exclamation point in the circle, it's going to say, this is what we mean. As an example, we fill out forms all the time. We have to do our social security number. Sometimes when you fill it out, it wants you to put the dashes in. Other times when you fill it out, it does not want the dashes, right? So hopefully in those fields that they have some sort of indicator that is visually apparent, or some help that will guide you and provide the instructions so that we get good data. And then ambiguous fields. In some industries out there, you guys know this, the terminology is really tough, right? So we want to have some standard terminology. Now, that could be just in relation to you, your company, or your customers. So we want to just make sure that maybe we have a definition dictionary somewhere that people can look up so that we're all marching to the same beat, right? So again, standard work applies to data collection too. So we want to make sure that we are all doing in good form, clear categories, instructions, and standard terminology. Quick win number 3 is checking for consistency. So here's a scenario. 3 inspectors evaluate the same product. Now, this is very common. We could talk about gauge R&R or design of experiments, and we get this result. Inspector A says, we'll pass. Inspector B says, we'll fail. Inspector C says, it should pass. Do we have a product problem or a measurement problem? And one of the first questions I would ask is, show me the standard work, right? Show me the standard work. The second question I would ask is everyone following the standard work, right? And let's look at their measurement device. When's the last time we did calibration on these measurement devices, right? And that's an important question to ask. And sometimes we think, oh, we don't need to do that. Well, I had a customer that ordered tape measures. They had no idea that the tape measures that they ordered did not start basically with zero, right? So if we take our tape measure out and we hold it up, we know that the end point is essentially zero. And then we have 1 inch, 2 inch, etc. This particular tape measure started at 1. So there was no, it was like short an inch basically. So they did not know that for quite some time. So they were starting to wonder what was really going on because they were doing some measuring, and they were doing some inspecting, and they were like, what is going on? Why are we all off by an inch? And then they went and looked at their tape measures, right? So when have we done any PM on our measurement device? When have we done any calibration on the measurement device? What sort of training, what sort of standard work instructions are people following? Is everyone following the same process? So those are all good questions to ask to start your investigation. And then that human side of measurement, right? So measurement variation comes from fatigue. People are just tired, right? They just want to let's just pass it because otherwise it's going to create a big deal. I've heard this before too. I know the machine doesn't look like it's running right. Just give it like 10 minutes and it'll be fine. It'll work itself out. Well, then for 10 minutes, you have now created rework or scrap, right? um, Bias. So measurement variation comes from bias, where again, people think that it'll be okay, or it's close enough, or they've had different training, or in most circumstances right now, I would say no training. No training is definitely a problem for that. And assumptions, right? So assumptions, we all know what assumptions can do, right? They can come to bite you. So people are making assumptions and time pressure. Hurry up, we need to get this product out the door. It looks good. It's good enough. All the other ones passed. Why do we have to check this? Now, remember, we're talking about this could be human measurement, human using a device. This could be a electronic ways to measure, right? So there are devices out there that will use essentially an eye to be able to look at parts, and it will be doing automated inspection, which are really cool, right? But they also have to be programmed correctly in the front end by a human. And that is reliant on that human to do it the right way so that we could get good results from that too. So people aren't the problem, but poor systems create poor measurements, right? So again, we've talked many times, it's a process problem, not a people problem, right? So we're not going to go and assign blame in that previous example of Inspector B saying it's fail. We're not going to go and say, what are you doing wrong? Why did you fail it? Or get pressure from other people. It's really going back and looking at the process and seeing what's different. Number 4, quick win number 4 is to visualize your data. Visualize your data. So we want our data to tell a story, right? And it's hard to tell a story in an Excel spreadsheet. Let's be honest, right? It's hard to tell a story in an Excel spreadsheet. So what can we use to kind of summarize the data and show us really what's going on? Or maybe show us something that we didn't even know was there. So we can use something like a Pareto chart. So Pareto chart's very easy. There's a Pareto chart function in Excel, and of course you can use AI for this, but you do have to know how to interpret the data. So it's great to be able to say, hey, I'm just going to take a picture of the data with my phone, or I'll use Copilot, right? But you have to be able to understand how to interpret what is that data telling us on a Pareto chart or a control chart. Now, control charts we can look at and go, wow, that's really easy to be able to understand a control chart. Yes, at the surface level, it's very apparent when you have a problem, like you see on this page, but there's also ways that we can look at a control chart to predict the future. So there's different rules that say, hey, if you have 6 dots, data points alternating up and down, that means that your process is out of control. We have a histogram, which is just a bar chart, right? So a histogram is a bar chart. And then of course a run chart, which plots data over time. So we can look at that run chart and be like, wow, what's going on in that particular time, that particular machine, that particular shift, or that particular operator. So visualize your data to help you tell the story. Again, tells that story. Visualization helps us hear the story, which I really like that. Red flags to watch out for. So numbers changing dramatically each week. I'll give you another example. I went to an organization and they wanted some help with their efficiencies in their particular one particular area of their line. And I said, okay. And I said, what's the labor efficiency in this particular area? And they said it was around 60%. And I said, okay, can I see the labor efficiency for all of the other areas? And they showed me, and they would have labor efficiency, this other area, 125%, labor efficiency in this area, 115%. It was like, how can you have better than 100% labor efficiency? Right? So it's going back to be able to say, and then how do they change over time? How are we taking those measurements? How can you have better than 100% efficiency? My next question is, when's the last time we did a time study in this area? So that was a red flag for me. Now, initially, you may have taken that at a surface level and said, oh, 60% efficiency, let's go for it. But when I asked what the goal was and they said 100%, that didn't sit right with me because 100% labor efficiency just seemed a little off. It seemed like we needed to be perfect. And we all know that there are very few perfect processes. So that's why I asked for more data. Teams maintaining separate spreadsheets. And that, by the way, can fall with anywhere in an organization. Previous organization that I worked for, the finance department had hundreds of spreadsheets that they were maintaining off system. They didn't trust the data in the system, or they didn't understand how to get reports, or they didn't have access to be able to do that. So they were maintaining spreadsheets. So that's another red flag. Metrics that require manual calculations. So your on-time delivery should not be a manual calculation. You should have an ERP system that is providing that information to you. And if you say, oh, well, I don't trust that data in there, or that data is not right, we need to address that first before we start addressing anything else. Different departments report different numbers. So you come in and say, here is where we are this year from a financial perspective. And then the sales team comes in and says a different number. You're like, where did that come from? And then nobody knows where the data comes from, right? So where is that data entered? Where is it entered in the system? Who enters it? Who is responsible for it? One question that I always ask, especially if you're working for an organization that has a large ERP system, are you using a template to create that? Now, this could be in healthcare. Are you using a template to create a new patient in Epic? Or are you using a template to create a new part in SAP? What are you doing? What are the defaults in the templates? Where is this data coming from? How did that particular field get flagged or not flagged? And then what does that mean? So there are three sources of measurement error. So if your data looks funny, it could be from people, process, or technology. Now, people, inconsistent interpretation. Now, it's not blaming the person. It is really saying that they are struggling with interpreting the information, and they probably don't have any standard work to go back and relate to. So nobody or somebody told them, and some of you know that I talk about the ghosts that work in your organization, the ghosts that have of people past, not people like this past, but people that no longer work there, right? Where they had said, the measurement must be between 2 and 3, and that's stuck in that person's head forever. And they're not, that's not necessarily the application or how we should be following it now. So again, inconsistent interpretation. Maybe they even have problems with the process. Again, unclear procedures. So, or no procedures. Let's just be really frank and open. How about no procedures and technology inaccurate systems? Maybe, there's something wrong with the system where we need, that 1 or 2 decimal points for accuracy, and the system doesn't allow it. So people are rounding or they're truncating, and that's causing problems too. There's so many ways that you can look at this and to be able to say, wow, this is really how our data could get potentially really messed up within our system or the way we're keeping track of it. So your action plan. So write one operational definition. So we define on-time delivery as, so for your organization, let's get all the players in the same place. And let's really define what these key metrics that define the health of your organization, what they are and what they mean. Standardize one form. Let's create one standard form. A form that keeps coming up in my sessions is the request for time off form, right? So some organizations are still using paper, right? They're still using paper to request time off. But why does the request for time off for one area of the business look different from another area of the business? So can we create some sort of standard for that? Review one metric and ask, how did we get this data? Where does this data come from? Right? Where does it come from? And do we trust our data source? Train one team. Just train one team on how to interpret data or gather data or the importance of accurate data. And eliminate one unnecessary measurement. My question for you is, are any of your metrics what are called vanity metrics? So what's a vanity metric? A vanity metric is something that makes you feel good, but it doesn't really tell the health of your business. So for example, if you say, we're upcoming new business, we're a startup, and we have 10,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok, that's a bit of a vanity metric, right? That's really not telling you the health of your business. 10,000 followers does not mean 10,000 customers, right? So those numbers are more vanity. They make you feel good, right? You're like, oh, we're so cool. We have this many followers. However, you could still be struggling as an organization. So eliminate one unnecessary measurement. There's also lots of conversation in regard to if you have metrics that are green all the time, is that a good thing? Well, if we truly understand how it's being measured, and we all agree to that, if it's green and it's appropriately being measured all of the time, then do we really need to look at it every single week, month, or quarter? It's up to you. I worked with an organization where I came in and they had 31 metrics that they reviewed every week. And my first question was, how long have this many been green? How are we calculating them, manually or automatically? Do we still need to measure it if we have proved that we have a repeatable process with predictable results? Only your organization can answer that question. So some key takeaways from today. Remember, better decisions require better data, right? So we want data-based decisions, but that data we must be able to trust. Standardization creates confidence. So if somebody has a standard, they're going to feel more confident in their work, and you're going to feel more confident in their data. I was just talking with a customer and we were talking about, creating standard work and how it just can look different for everyone. That standardization can be a video, or we were talking about the fact that, remember the price stickers on cars, right? We all know what they look like. They fit in a window, right? And they made something that looked like that for their standardization for their machines. So it was just basically, a piece of paper like this that was laminated with the standard work. It was very visual, had images and pictures on it. And then they stuck it on the outside of the machine, and there was their standard work, which I thought was fantastic. It was a one-pager and nobody had to go and read a boring Word document. Measurement systems include people and processes. Okay, so measurement systems, again, we're talking about the people, how many operators. We could talk about repeatability and reproducibility also if you like HR&R. And small improvements can create big results, right? So small improvements, just getting some consistency with your data and getting consistency with your process can lead to huge improvements. That can lead to we have less customer complaints because we are sending better quality products. We can lead to we have less frustration from our employees because we're making this easier for them, or they get to take ownership of that process. And trustworthy data accelerates improvement. When we can trust our data and know without a doubt that it's as accurate as we can possibly get, then that's a foundation for our improvements. So, our final thought for today is how will better data improve decisions, customer outcomes, cost, and culture for your organization? Yeah, data really does have to do with culture too. So, I'd like to provide a free download. Every time I'm doing class, I'm trying to be able to provide something of value to you, my customer. So you can download a free data confidence scorecard. It's just an Excel. It's on my website. There's no cost ever to any of these. So you can download this data confidence scorecard and do a little evaluation, see where you are from an organization. Of course, you can visualize that data, right? Make pictures out of it, visualize the data. Maybe you want a spider chart, or maybe you put it in AI and ask AI to visualize that data after you've done your scorecard, which I think would be very interesting for your organizations. So our services from learning to lean, leadership lean assessment, lean champion training, lean and leadership coaching. We do site assessments. We do lean Six Sigma training. So white belt, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, problem solving, value stream mapping, 5S, etc. We also do project management, consulting and training, and Kaizen events. So thank you for coming to today's session. I greatly appreciate it. If you have an opportunity, please check out my training page and connect with me on LinkedIn. Every month, I offer these free sessions that are between a half an hour to 45 minutes. I also post them on our YouTube channel. So check out Learning to Lean on YouTube, and you can see recorded monthly sessions. And I can't wait to see you next month. Thanks and have a great day.